Hi, welcome to Professional Certifications channel. Let's break down CISSP exam preparation, one topic a day for focused and effective learning. Today's topic is least privilege.
Definition. The principle of least privilege is a security concept that dictates that users, systems, and applications should be granted the minimum level of access necessary to perform their tasks. This minimizes the potential attack surface by restricting unnecessary access to sensitive systems, data, and resources. Least privilege reduces the risk of unauthorized access, accidental data modification, or malicious actions by limiting privileges to only what is essential for a specific role or task.
Key concepts.
1. Purpose of least privilege. The primary goal of least privilege is to minimize security risks by limiting the access rights of users and systems. This ensures that individuals and processes only have the privileges needed to complete their assigned duties, reducing the chances of misuse, accidental or intentional. It prevents users or programs from having unnecessary administrative privileges, which can be exploited by attackers in case of a compromise.
2. Principle of least privilege in practice. Users, employees are given access only to the data, applications, and systems they need to perform their job duties. For example, an HR employee should not have access to financial data, and a sales employee should not have access to sensitive HR records. Systems and applications and processes should run with the lowest level of privileges necessary. For example, web applications should not run with full administrative rights, but rather with restricted permissions to reduce the risk of an exploit affecting the entire system. Devices like servers and network appliances should only be able to perform the functions they are intended for, and access should be restricted to authorized personnel.
3. Types of privileges in least privilege. User privileges, rights granted to individual users, such as the ability to read, write, or execute files or access specific applications or databases. System privileges, privileges assigned to systems, processes, or services that allow them to interact with resources, such as file systems or network interfaces. Administrative privileges, high-level access that allows users to make system-wide changes, such as installing software, managing users, or changing configurations. These privileges should be tightly controlled and only given when absolutely necessary.
4. Key practices in implementing least privilege. Role-based access control, RBAC access is granted based on a user's role within the organization. Roles are defined according to job functions, and users are assigned to these roles, which have specific permissions. This ensures that users can only access the resources necessary for their job. Example: a system administrator may have access to manage servers, while a database administrator has access to manage databases. Neither has access to each other's resources unless explicitly required. Just-in-time (JIT) access privileges are granted temporarily, only when they are needed, and are revoked automatically after the task is completed. This prevents users or systems from holding elevated privileges for longer than necessary. Example: a developer is granted elevated access to a production system for a specific maintenance task and the access is revoked after the task is completed. Separation of duties (SOD) critical tasks are divided among different users to prevent one individual from having complete control over a process. This prevents fraud, abuse, or accidental mistakes. Example: one employee may be responsible for approving financial transactions, while another is responsible for processing the payment. No single person has full control over both functions. Access reviews. Regularly reviewing and auditing access rights ensures that users and systems maintain only the privileges necessary for their current roles. Access that is no longer needed is revoked, preventing privilege creep. Example: conducting quarterly access reviews to ensure that employees who have changed roles or left the organization no longer have access to critical systems.
5. Advantages of least privilege. Minimizes attack surface. By limiting access to only what is necessary, the potential avenues for attack are reduced. Attackers who compromise an account with limited privileges will not gain full access to critical systems or data. Reduces the impact of insider threats. Malicious insiders or compromised employees will only be able to access the data they need for their roles, limiting the potential damage they can cause. Prevents accidental damage. Users or processes with excessive privileges may accidentally alter or delete critical data. Least privilege reduces the likelihood of these mistakes by limiting what they can access. Improves compliance. Regulatory frameworks such as HIPAA, PCI-DSS, and GDPR often require strict access controls. Least privilege helps organizations meet these compliance requirements by enforcing tight access control measures.
6. Challenges of implementing least privilege. Complexity in management. Implementing and maintaining least privilege can be complex, especially in large organizations with diverse roles and systems. Defining appropriate access levels for each role, continuously updating access based on changing roles, and managing temporary access can be time-consuming. Privilege creep. Over time, users may accumulate additional privileges as they change roles or work on different projects, leading to an expanded attack surface. Without regular access reviews and proper governance, privilege creep can undermine least privilege principles. Balancing security and usability. Strict enforcement of least privilege may lead to users being unable to perform their tasks efficiently if they do not have the access they need. This can cause frustration or result in users seeking workarounds, which can introduce new risks.
7. Least privilege in specific scenarios. Servers, server processes, such as web servers or database servers, should not run with administrative privileges. Instead, they should be assigned only the privileges necessary to perform their functions, e.g., read/write access to specific directories or databases. Database access. A user accessing a database should have the least privilege necessary to perform their queries. For example, a marketing employee should only have read access to customer data and not the ability to modify or delete records. Privileged account management. PAM. Administrative or privileged accounts with high levels of access should be tightly controlled and monitored. This includes limiting the number of users with such accounts, enforcing strong authentication, and using just-in-time access to grant temporary elevated privileges.
8. Least privilege and compliance. PCI-DSS, Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, requires that organizations enforce strict access controls to ensure that only authorized personnel have access to cardholder data and critical systems. HIPAA, Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, mandates that healthcare organizations limit access to electronic protected health information, EPHI, to only those employees who need it to perform their job functions. GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, requires that organizations implement appropriate technical and organizational measures, such as least privilege, to protect personal data and prevent unauthorized access.
9. Auditing and monitoring least privilege. Access audits. Regularly auditing who has access to critical systems and data ensures that users maintain only the privileges they need. This helps identify and eliminate excessive or outdated privileges. Example: conducting quarterly reviews of access logs to verify that only authorized users have access to sensitive customer data. Monitoring privileged accounts. Privileged accounts should be continuously monitored for suspicious activity. Logging and monitoring these accounts can help detect potential abuse or insider threats. Example: using a CM system to log all administrative actions and generate alerts when abnormal activity occurs, such as multiple failed login attempts or changes to critical system configurations.
10. Tools for enforcing least privilege. Identity and access management. IAM solutions help organizations enforce least privilege by controlling user identities, roles, and access to systems and data. Privileged access management. PAM tools manage and monitor privileged accounts, ensuring that administrative privileges are granted only when necessary and revoked when no longer needed. Role-based access control. RBAC tools help assign and enforce access rights based on defined roles, ensuring that users can only access the resources necessary for their job functions. Just-in-time, JIT, privilege management. JIT tools grant temporary access rights for users or processes to complete specific tasks, revoking access when the task is completed.
Importance in the CISSP exam. The principle of least privilege is essential in the identity and access management, IAM, and security operations domains of the CISSP exam. CISSP aspirants need to understand how to implement and enforce least privilege across different types of systems, the risks associated with excessive privileges, and the controls needed to prevent privilege abuse. Exam questions may focus on the practical application of least privilege in different scenarios, how to minimize privilege creep, and how to balance security with usability.
Real-world example. A financial institution applies least privilege by restricting access to its customer database. Only customer service representatives have read access to customer records, while only database administrators can modify or delete records. Furthermore, administrative access is restricted to senior IT staff, and just-in-time access is used to temporarily elevate privileges for maintenance tasks. This ensures that users only have the access necessary to perform their roles, reducing the risk of unauthorized data changes or leaks.